What's going on, everyone? So, I was at the gym this morning, getting in a quick workout before the holiday craziness really kicks in, and I had SportsCenter playing on one of the TVs while I was on the treadmill. I wasn't paying super close attention at first because I figured it was just going to be the usual Christmas Eve content, feel-good stories, highlights from games, maybe some discussion about upcoming matchups. But then they cut to this segment about the 49ers, and I saw George Kittle's face on the screen with injury update underneath it, and I immediately turned up the volume on my headphones because this is crucial information heading into that massive Sunday night football game against the Bears. But here's what really caught me off guard. After they discussed Kittle's ankle situation, the panel completely pivoted and started talking about Jakobi Meyers potentially being traded to San Francisco, and I actually stopped running and just stood there on the treadmill watching because this was not a conversation I was expecting to hear on Christmas Eve. Let me walk you through everything that went down on the show because the way they connected all these 49ers storylines together was actually fascinating, and it has major implications for their playoff run and championship aspiration. So, they opened the segment with Scott Van Pelt wishing everyone happy holidays and Merry Christmas if you celebrate. And he immediately got into the biggest story hovering around the 49ers right now, the status of tight end George Kittle. SVP was describing how Kittle got hip drop tackled in the third quarter against the Colts on Monday Night Football, which somehow wasn't flagged despite being the exact type of play that injured Ricky Pearsall the week before. SVP mentioned that Kittle initially said after the game that it happened in the second quarter, but then he clarified and said it actually happened in the third frame. Hey, what's up everyone? Before we jump in, let me ask you something that takes 1 second. That like button? Hitting it right now helps this channel more than you know. It's how we reach thousands more fans with this content. Just smash that like button real quick. It's the biggest way you can support what we're building here. Every like matters, so hit it now. Neil Everett jumped in talking about how Kittle was listed as questionable but didn't return to the game, though the 49ers were up so much and scoring at will that they played it very safe given they were on that Colts turf at Lucas Oil Stadium. Neil was going through Kittle's stats from the game: 8 targets, 7 catches, 115 yards, 1 receiving touchdown, emphasizing that despite missing a lot of the second half, Kittle was absolutely balling out alongside Brock Purdy, catching one of those 5 Purdy touchdown passes on Monday night. But here's where the segment got really interesting. Stan Verrett brought up Kittle's comments after the game where he said he didn't think it was a high ankle sprain, and Stan was reading from Jeremy Fowler's ESPN report that came out last night, confirming that Kittle is dealing with a mid to low ankle sprain, not a high ankle. Stan was really emphasizing how this is the best news possible for Kittle and the 49ers offense because high ankle sprains can be catastrophic and lead to players being out for multiple weeks. And with the playoffs on the horizon and the 49ers having already clinched a playoff spot, this game against Chicago matters enormously. SVP was nodding along saying this game could go as far as determining the number 1 seed in the NFC, and he brought up this fun fact that Kittle actually grew up a Bears fan when he was a kid, so there's some extra personal motivation there. Then they cut to this tweet from Dr. Jesse Morse, a double-board-certified MD, who provided some medical clarification on the injury. The good news is it's not a high ankle sprain. The bad news is it's likely a medial ankle sprain, which means if Kittle does play against the Bears, he's going to be in some pain, but the question is whether he can manage that pain. Neil was getting really passionate about how Kittle is the ultimate difference maker and why the 49ers made another big investment in him this offseason. They look at him as a pillar of the organization, and tight ends can age well. Neil acknowledged that Kittle has dealt with some injuries over time, but hasn't missed a bunch of games throughout his career. This year he's only played in about 10 games, but he's still the best tight end in football. A dynamic catcher and runner who has absolutely boosted the run game efficiency since he came back from his earlier injury. Stan pulled up Kittle's numbers over the last 6 games, and they're absolutely insane. 40 catches, 499 yards, and 5 touchdowns over that stretch. He's been en fuego, on fire, completely dominating. The panel was unanimous that Kittle playing or not playing against the Bears could be the difference between the 49ers winning and losing this massive Sunday Night Football game. But then SVP did this transition where he said, speaking of the 49ers passing game and their weapons, and that's when Jakobi Meyers' name popped up on the screen. And I was like, wait, what? SVP started laying out this scenario where the 49ers might be looking to add another veteran receiver to complement their current group. And Meyers' name has been circulating in trade discussions for weeks now after he requested trades from the Raiders back in August and October. Neil jumped in here with the context about why the 49ers would even be interested in another receiver. He talked about how in 2025, San Francisco has dealt with significant injuries to important receivers like Brandon Ayuk and Ricky Pearsall. Ayuk was actually placed on IR and is done for the season. And there's also the uncertain contract situation with Jauan Jennings, who's been seeking an extension. Neil was making this point about how adding Meyers would fill an immediate need and provide high-level production as a second or third option in the offense. Stan started breaking down Meyers' profile as a player and why he'd be such a perfect fit for Kyle Shanahan's system. The first thing he emphasized was Meyers' reliability and sure hand. This is a guy who rarely drops the ball and is always in the right place. Stan called him a consistent chain mover, which makes him an extremely reliable target for Brock Purdy when you need a third down conversion or a crucial catch in a big moment. Meyers is the type of receiver you can count on to make the play. SVP added to this by talking about Meyers' versatility and how he can play both inside in the slot and outside on the boundary. That kind of positional flexibility is exactly what Shanahan values in his system. Guys who have high football IQ and can line up in multiple spots, depending on the game plan and defensive matchups. SVP was saying that Meyers would fit seamlessly into what the 49ers are trying to do offensively. But here's where Neil really drove home why this makes sense from a team-building perspective. The 49ers receiver depth chart has been decimated by injuries and is uncertain moving forward. Brandon Ayuk is out for the year, and his long-term future with the team is unclear, given everything that's happened. Ricky Pearsall has shown flashes, but he's also been dealing with injuries. Jauan Jennings has been fantastic, but he's looking for a contract extension, and there's no guarantee he's back next year. So where does that leave the 49ers if they want to make a deep playoff run and compete for a championship? Stan was nodding along enthusiastically, bringing up Meyers' proven production coming off a 1,000-yard season in 2024. That's not some young player with potential. That's a veteran receiver who's proven he can produce consistently even when playing with different quarterbacks. Stan was making this argument that for a team like the 49ers that's trying to win immediately with Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, and their talented defense, adding a guy like Meyers could be that final piece that puts them over the top. But then SVP wanted to address the elephant in the room. What would it actually cost the 49ers to acquire Jakobi Meyers? The Raiders aren't just going to give him away for nothing, even though he's requested trades multiple times. SVP was speculating that it would probably take a mid-round draft pick, maybe a 4th or 5th rounder, plus potentially some salary cap maneuvering to make the money work. Neil jumped in saying that's actually a pretty reasonable price for a proven, reliable receiver who can contribute immediately. The panel then started discussing how Meyers would fit into the 49ers' offensive scheme alongside their other weapons. Stan was painting this picture of formations where you've got Deebo Samuel on one side, Jakobi Meyers on the other side or in the slot, George Kittle, if healthy, creating mismatches in the middle of the field, and Christian McCaffrey in the backfield. That's an absolutely loaded offense that would be incredibly difficult for defenses to game plan against because you have threats everywhere. SVP brought up Kyle Shanahan's track record of getting the most out of receivers in his system, citing guys like Emmanuel Sanders, Mohamed Sanu in his brief stint, and how he's currently maximizing Jauan Jennings, who wasn't even a high draft pick. The argument SVP was making is that if Shanahan can do that much with Jennings, imagine what he could do with a player like Myers, who's already proven he can be a legitimate number 2 receiver in this league. But then, Neil wanted to circle back to the other major 49ers news from the segment, which was the Trent Williams update. Neil was showing this great clip from after Monday Night Football, where Williams was on ESPN with Scott Van Pelt, and 49ers fans who had stuck around after the game were chanting, "One more year, one more year." Williams heard that and told SVP, "I'm nowhere near done. We've got a few more years left." Neil was saying, "This is fantastic news for the 49ers because Trent Williams is one of the best left tackles in the history of football, and the more he can play at this elite level, the better it is for the offense." Stan pulled up Williams's PFF grades for 2025, and they're absolutely ridiculous for a 37-year-old player. Overall PFF grade of 90.4, which is third in the entire NFL among offensive tackles. Pass blocking grade of 79.3, which is 11th in the league. Run blocking grade of 91.6, which is second in the NFL. Stan was emphasizing that Trent Williams at 37 years old is still performing at an all-pro level, and he was just named to his 12th Pro Bowl on Tuesday, tying the record for most Pro Bowl nods all time for an offensive tackle in NFL history. SVP was getting really animated about how having Williams protecting Brock Purdy's blind side for potentially a few more years is crucial for the 49ers championship window. If you're going to add a receiver like Jacoby Myers and keep building this offense around Purdy, McCaffrey, Kittle, and the other weapons, you need elite offensive line play to make it all work. Williams provides that at the most important position on the line. But then the segment took a bit of a darker turn when they had to discuss the Brandon Ayuk situation. Neil was explaining how over the weekend, a video surfaced from Ayuk's YouTube channel showing him speeding past Levi's Stadium in a Cadillac going up to 104 miles per hour in a zone where the speed limit is between 30 and 40 miles per hour. According to TMZ, the Santa Clara Police Department is now investigating the video. Stan was visibly frustrated talking about this, saying that Ayuk has been placed on IR and is ineligible to come back this year, and according to Kyle Shanahan, he's essentially been missing for about a month. Stan read Ayuk's statement from his YouTube channel where he apologized and said his car content won't include speeding anymore, and he was praying with his son and wouldn't want anybody else to miss out on an opportunity to do the same with their loved one. But Stan was skeptical about whether Ayuk genuinely means this, or if he's just saying it because he's being investigated and feeling the heat. SVP was shaking his head, saying that Ayuk needs to get help, and while he's a special player, something clearly isn't right with his situation. The way things have gone awry for him this season is shocking, and it's another reason why adding a receiver like Jacoby Myers makes so much sense for the 49ers. You need reliable, mature veteran presence in your receiver room, and Myers brings exactly that kind of professionalism. Then the panel wanted to spend some time discussing Kyle Shanahan and his Coach of the Year credentials. Neil was making this passionate case that Shanahan should absolutely be in the conversation for NFL Coach of the Year, given what he's done this season with San Francisco. The fact that they're 11-4 and still have an opportunity at the number 1 seed is crazy, considering all the injuries and adversity they've faced. Shanahan does a lot of things well. He's looked at as one of the best offensive minds in football. He's brilliant on that side of the ball. And right now, he has the offense clicking and humming with Brock Purdy playing exceptional football. Stan brought up some historical context about how well this 49ers offense has been playing lately. San Francisco is the first team in NFL history to have 80-plus points scored over a 2-game stretch and not have to punt. The 49ers haven't punted since November 30th, which is an absolutely insane statistic that shows how dominant they've been offensively. Stan was attributing a lot of that to Shanahan's play calling and scheme. But then SVP had to bring up Shanahan's Achilles heel, which is game management and specifically his challenge decision. SVP was saying that for all of Shanahan's strengths, game management is not one of them, and whoever is in his ear giving him advice on what plays to challenge needs to be fired, because Shanahan's challenge decisions this year have been mystifying and could potentially cost San Francisco in the playoffs. SVP was listing some examples of terrible challenges that wasted timeouts and killed momentum at crucial moments. Neil was agreeing but providing some balance, saying that overall Shanahan has built a great culture and instilled belief in this team, especially after losing Nick Bosa and Fred Warner to season-ending injuries. The fact that the team hasn't collapsed and is actually playing their best football down the stretch is a testament to Shanahan's leadership. But yeah, he definitely needs to get better at knowing when to challenge plays and when to save those timeouts for critical situations. The conversation then circled back to Jakobi Meyers and why adding him would make the 49ers even more dangerous heading into the playoffs. Stan was making this point about how in the playoffs, you need depth at every position because one injury can derail your entire season. Look at what happened with Ayuk. He goes down, and suddenly, the 49ers receiver room looks a lot thinner. If they had Myers as insurance and as another legitimate weapon, it would give them so much more flexibility and options in their game planning. SVP was talking about how playoff defenses are going to key in on Deebo Samuel and try to take him away as the primary receiving threat. Having Myers as a second option who can win his matchups consistently would force defenses to make impossible choices. Do you double Deebo and let Myers go one-on-one? Do you try to take away both and leave George Kittle in favorable matchups over the middle? Do you sell out to stop the pass and let Christian McCaffrey run all over you? There are no good answers when an offense has that many weapons. Neil brought up the mental and leadership aspect of adding a veteran like Myers. He's been in big games. He's played in the playoffs. He knows what it takes to perform when the stakes are highest. For a relatively young 49ers receiving core, having that veteran presence in the room could be invaluable. Myers could mentor guys like Ricky Pearsall and help them prepare for the intensity of playoff football. Stan was wrapping things up by emphasizing the urgency of the 49ers situation. They're 11-4, they have a real shot at the #1 seed, and their championship window is wide open right now with Brock Purdy on a rookie contract. Well, he's not on a rookie contract anymore by 2025, but the point is about maximizing the window while you have it. If there's a move to be made that improves your chances of winning a Super Bowl, even marginally, you have to make that move. Jakobi Meyers represents exactly that kind of upgrade. Not a franchise-altering acquisition, but a solid veteran addition that makes you better in a meaningful way. SVP ended the segment by saying that whatever happens with the George Kittle injury situation will obviously be the biggest factor in Sunday night's game against the Bears, but keep an eye on the Jakobi Meyers trade rumors, because if the 49ers can pull that off before the trade deadline or in the coming weeks, it could be the move that puts them over the top as legitimate Super Bowl favorites. What really stuck with me after watching this entire SportsCenter segment was how they wove together all these different 49ers storylines into one cohesive narrative about a team that's trying to capitalize on their championship window. The Kittle injury creates uncertainty, but hopefully won't be long-term. The Trent Williams commitment gives them stability on the offensive line for a few more years. The Brandon Ayuk situation is messy and concerning, and the potential Jakobi Meyers addition could address their receiver depth issues in a really meaningful way. The panel didn't just report news, they actually provided context and analysis about why these stories matter and how they connect to the bigger picture of the 49ers' Super Bowl aspirations. That's the kind of sports journalism that actually adds value rather than just regurgitating press releases and injury reports. So what do you guys think? Should the 49ers be aggressive in trying to trade for Jakobi Meyers? Or should they stick with their current receiver group and hope everyone stays healthy? And what about the George Kittle situation? Are you confident he'll be able to play through the ankle injury against the Bears? Or should they rest him and save him for a potential playoff run? Let me know in the comments, because after watching SportsCenter break all this down, I'm way more invested in how the 49ers navigate these next few weeks than I was before. And I'm genuinely curious what other fans think about the direction this team is heading.